I am Jay Wilson. I'm the lead designer of Diablo 3, and these are my very, very close friends. Leonard Boyarsky, lead world designer, Brian Morrisroe, our art director, and Julian Love, who is our lead technical artist. Today we're going to take you through how we design characters for Diablo 3. We're going to focus mostly on character classes, but a little bit on monsters as well. And this is pretty much going to be a cross-discipline type of panel. Essentially, we're going to do design, story and lore, and art. So we're going to take you kind of through our entire pipeline of how we do that. So we're going to be jumping back and forth between a bunch of us as we go through the slides. And so I'm going to go ahead and introduce, as I said, Leonard, and he's going to start talking about how we develop story for our player classes.
The first thing we wanted to do is look at the history and character backgrounds. We wanted really unique characters, and to do this, we wanted our characters to have well-defined personalities as well as character arcs and basically their own feel. Now, this is reflected in the skill system, or their personal skills that Jay is going to talk about, but we set out to create archetypes. When you're playing a barbarian, you want to feel like you're playing the powerful fighter from the way he talks to the skills he has. Also, the NPCs in the game, the non-player characters, will react to the classes differently. The barbarians are a fairly well-known race of people, though they are 8 feet tall and about 300 pounds of pure muscle, which can be intimidating. And the witch doctors are from a tribe that's very remote and not a lot of people know about them, and so they're very kind of strange to people. They're not quite sure what to make of them. So the NPCs will react to them differently, and that will add a different flavor to your playing experience, which will hopefully bring you into the story more and bring you into the game more. And that's not to say we're going to have more story than the previous games. We like to think of it as deeper and more fulfilling. We're not going to have a longer presentation. There's not going to be huge dialogue trees. We're just doing a more concise, better presentation, we believe. So, interesting characterization adds weight to the story. When we flesh out these characters and give them a backstory, it makes them much more interesting than, say, your off-the-shelf fighter. The barbarian is the same barbarian that you played in Diablo 2. But it's 20 years later. He's seen a lot. He's gone through a lot. Finding out what these things are, where he's at in his life, what has happened to his people. At the end of Lord of Destruction, Mount Arreat was destroyed. That's where the barbarian's ancestral home is. We have lore about the different classes that we've introduced so far up on the website that goes deeper into these things. But we're just trying to make the point that we're personalizing these characters. They're not generic. They're not an empty void in the middle of the story. We've really tried to help make the character a central part of the story by giving him a stake in it. The different classes have different reasons for being where they are at the beginning of the story. They have different reasons for becoming involved in the story. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Jay.
After we've kind of developed a basic background for a character, especially a class, what we do on the design side is try to come up with a series of defining traits, abilities, and things that those characters will use. So, and those are really we're not at the point where we're designing skills or anything like that. We're just trying to get the broad strokes. What's this character about? So we have a couple of just design philosophies we follow at this stage. They're not necessarily even unique to us. They're something that is just kind of Blizzard design philosophy that we share across the teams. So I'm going to go through a few of those now. The first one's concentrated coolness. And the idea of this is that every class needs to have its own thing that makes it cool, and that needs to be unique to them. And so it makes an archetype, so it makes a character really sing and makes them really awesome. The Barbarian's a great example. He's this pure physical melee fighter. And you could have other fighters as other classes, but you wouldn't want any of them that have his tone. You wouldn't want any of them that have his brute strength, because that's really what defines him. So getting those kind of key things and saying, well, and for the Barbarian, it was He's just an unstoppable, sheer physical force. So that was kind of his concentrated, cool idea. The next one is putting together a series of defining traits. And these are basically just examples of the kinds of things that they could do. So you could say a particular class like the Witch Doctor, well, he raises zombies, and he plays around with diseases and plagues, and he likes to control people's minds. So these are kind of what we call defining traits. These are basically just to kind of get people's imagination going on these characters so that if we're not excited about them, then they're not going to be cool. And that's a lot of how we make the decisions about what characters we're going to do is what we're excited about. So, and then the last one is, we ask ourselves, are these things really awesome? Are they really cool? Are we talking, when we talk about skills for a character class, are we saying, well, we can have a skill where you do like 1% extra critical damage? It's like, oh, well, that's not very exciting. I mean, it's got its point within an overall kind of character build system, but if that's what you're defining your character by, well, that's not a really awesome character. But if we say, oh, well, he hits the ground so hard that everything in front of him gets completely crushed by the seismic force, that's pretty awesome. So those are the kinds of things that we look for the characters. And it's funny because when you talk about them in a panel, they almost seem obvious, but it's really easy when you get in a team to get caught into those nitty-gritty details of like, well, what kind of attributes is this guy going to have, or things like that. And it's always important to remember you start with something really awesome actions and defining traits. So now I'm going to pass it to Brian.
Thank you, Jay.
He knows better than me.
I got the script right in front of me. It's fine.